My next guest in the author studio is a truly inspirational lady. Brenda Novak started writing when she came home one day to discover that the nanny had been putting drugs in the baby's milk. And she thought, I better do something that keeps me at home all day, so she began writing novels. She's also a fantastic raiser of money for diabetes research. Her own son has diabetes, and as a type 2 diabetes sufferer myself, I'm immensely grateful to anyone who both raises awareness and helps research into this disease.
Boy, that's a tough one. I've heard so many rules, and then I'll read a book that breaks that rule, and they do it so well that I think, oh, well, I guess even that's not a rule. So I guess I'm not a proponent of the rules anymore. If you can do it well enough, then anything goes. So I guess my best advice, especially for aspiring writers, is to believe. Believe is what drives the whole engine. If you believe strongly enough, you will sit down, you will finish that book, you will market that book, no matter how many rejections you get. So to me, it's all about that one word, believe. That's a hard question too, because it's almost like asking you, which is your favorite child? You've put so much effort and time and energy into each book and trying to outdo yourself each time you write a new book. But if I had to pick just one, I would have to say it is part of my Whiskey Creek series, which is a small town contemporary series called This Heart of Mine. And I think the reason why I love it so much is it's a very emotional story, but the little boy, or the young man in the story, he was a little boy when some of the backstory happened, he's modeled after my own son. So I guess I feel an extra connection to that book. Oh, wow. The first book that I read that I remember really loving, like I started out not liking reading. I know that sounds like gasp, horror, but I did not like reading when I was a child until I got into the 3rd or 4th grade. And they made us go to the library one day, and I happened to check out a book on the shelf that was just classics. I didn't even know what a classic was, but I started reading The Secret Garden and Jane Eyre, and all of a sudden I was like, this is reading. So then I was hooked. I loved it, and I thought every book in that library was going to be just as good, and I whipped right through that shelf, and then it was back to Dick, Jane, and Spot, and I was bored stiff, and so then I was frustrated. But I would have to say that Jane Eyre is probably the most influential story because it's the one that stuck with me longest, and it's one that when I decided to write, I wanted to write something like Jane Eyre. I wanted it to be a historical. I wanted it to have these dark underpinnings and this beautiful love story, and so I would say Jane Eyre. I write mostly at home in my little cave. It's just a comfortable place that I have. My bed actually raises up, so I can do it there. I can do it at my desk. And it's just where I'm comfortable and it's quiet. Although when I started writing, I had 5 little kids, so I pretty much learned to write anywhere and over any amount of noise or television or whatever. Now that they're out of the house, it's gotten a bit easier. Oh, sugar. Oh, I know. I hear so many writers say coffee, they have to have coffee or they have to have wine. I'm not a big proponent of either. I didn't grow up drinking, so I didn't acquire a taste for it. So to me, when somebody offers me a drink, it's like saying, do you want something that tastes like hairspray? And I'm like, no, that's okay. But for me, it's sugar. That's my big weakness. I love baked goods. And so if anything that's a cookie or cake, it's gone if it's around me. The only ritual that I have is going back to read a little bit of the previous day's work. It kind of helps me sink into the scene or into the story, reminds me what the characters are facing, and it also helps me edit. I'm kind of a person that doesn't do a lot of outlining. I like to kind of find out what's going to happen, let the plot grow out of the characters, and so I'm what they call a pantser, and so I kind of handle it that way. No, actually, I never dreamed I would be an author. I thought that I was left-brained and that I would major in business and support my husband in whatever job he chose and raise a family. But I caught my daycare provider drugging my children with cough syrup to get them to sleep all day while I worked as a loan officer. And of course, I had to quit my job to stay home with them. I felt terrible this had happened, and I needed to find something I could do at home. So I was reading a really good book, Jude Devereux's Knight in Shining Armor, and when I finished it, I remember closing it and thinking to myself, I wonder if I could do this. And I started the next day. Oh, everything for me revolves around the conflict. I always start with the conflict. If I can find something meaty enough that I'm really excited about, then I can figure out what characters I think will be most challenged by that particular conflict, and then that's what I want to dive in and write about. I think every romance writer gets asked. I do a lot of suspense too, but at the heart of it, I do a lot of romance. And we always get asked, "Are you writing from experience?" Wink, wink. And it's kind of annoying because I also write suspense and I don't actually kill people. I do have an imagination, so it's pretty funny. I wish I had a penny for every time I was asked that. Yeah, I lost my first position. When I started in historical romance and I sold to HarperCollins. And my editor was let go while she was on vacation before she could come back. We were supposed to go to contract, so of course that new contract didn't happen. So I basically lost my first writing job. Luckily, I had attended a small conference not far from, well, actually it was a state away from where I lived, but I met a wonderful editor and I ended up sending something to her a little later, and that's who I've done 50 books with.
Brenda is a hugely engaging speaker. Thank you for all your great insights, and I hope you've enjoyed watching it. And if you have, do like it and share it.